It is the fourth Sunday in Lent, and Lent calls us to reflect on our lives, to search for forgiveness or the need to forgive. Lent is a time for us to look at the world differently. It's a time for us to look at our lives and our relationships differently. And today we have a familiar parable, one that we learned probably as a child. It's probably the best known parable of Jesus Christ. And it's often called by the name that we know it best, the prodigal son. But today I want to look at it just a little bit differently. So I invite you to the 15th chapter of Luke as Jesus tells about three parables in a row of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and today's selection about the lost son. All these are told in response to Jesus dealing with the complaints that he spends too much time with the undesirables, with the outsiders, with the sinners. So let us give attention to this familiar story of God's truth found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming to listen to him, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling, saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. Then Jesus said, "There was a man who had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the property that will belong to me.' So he divided his property between them. And a few days later, the younger son gathered up all he had, and he traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed the pigs. He would have gladly filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he said to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger? I will get up, and I will go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion, and he ran and he put his arms around him and he kissed him. And then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against you and against heaven. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him, and put his ring on his finger and his sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For the son of mine that was dead is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and he came and he approached the house, and he heard the music and the dancing, and he called out to one of the slaves, and he asked what was going on. And the servant replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has gotten him back safe and sound.' Then the other brother became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me so much as a young goat that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.' This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. It was March in 2019 that I was serving a church in North Bend, Nebraska. And it would have been one of those weird winters, kind of like this one, where it would get really cold and then get really hot and then get cold again. North Bend sits right on the north bend of the Platte River. So what had happened was we had one of those really big warm-ups, and then a freeze again, and then another big warm-up. And it caused an ice jam in the river. And the river decided to make its way into town. So we had 10, 15 minutes, 2 babies in diapers, and we had to go. We had to go to higher ground because we didn't know how far the river was going to come in. We didn't know how long it would be there. We didn't know when we'd be able to go back home. So we went up the hill and we found a home to stay in for a day or two, and then we took probably about a 3-hour, 4-hour drive to make what would normally be about a 45-minute drive to get around the river to end up at my mother-in-law's the next day. And it was good that we had left because the town lost all of its water. It was drinkable, all of its power. The parsonage that we were staying in ended up with about 4 to 5 feet of raw sewage in its basement. And we were refugees for a moment. We were without a home. And I remember that Sunday morning when I, pulled out my phone to do a service on Facebook for the first time. I would end up doing it a lot more about a year later. And all I wanted was just to go home. I just wanted to go home. And as I thought about that feeling of going home, it meant something different to think about the son that just wanted to go home after everything fell apart. And what that feels like, and what he felt like. Sometimes you can even go away from home to something good, like a vacation, but man, nowhere's as good as your own bed. And you want to just go home. And I had that desire. I just wanted to go home. So as we think about this story of the lost son, I would like you to think about those desires when you've wanted just to go home. And as we think about it, let us also remember of those people who had to leave their home because it wasn't safe, because they had nowhere else to go. And they would love to return home and prosper, but there may not be enough food, there may not be safety, there may not be shelter. And how do we treat those who are looking for a new home? The story we have today is called the prodigal son. And it's important to remember that Jesus at no time says the word prodigal. This is something that's been added in by translators over the centuries because they were the ones that put the headings on there throughout the scriptures. So when you're reading your Bible and you see that, those weren't the person who wrote that. They didn't, title their little section or their chapter like we have in some of our books today, but somebody decided, hey, I'm going to, let you know what's going on here. And they named this story the prodigal son, which is okay because, if we think of the word prodigal, it means, somebody that just wastes their money and does things wrong. But then when we do that, we just see the prodigal son and we forget that there's so many other people there in the story. And maybe there's a little bit more to the story of what happened to the son that left. So I want to talk about each of those people. Because when we think of parables, it's really commonplace for us to put ourselves in a role in one of these stories. So we'll begin with that younger son, the little brother, the one we've called the prodigal. And when we think about it, especially with our views in the Western world and culture, what do we cling to most? He went, he was kind of a brat, he asked for all of his inheritance, and then he just squandered it. He was just wasteful. Not only could he just not wait for dad to die, but once he got his stuff, he just threw it all away. And the older brother gives us a little bit more of a background and says, you know what he really spent it on, dad. And we're supposed to see him as just even more of a jerk. And that's the normal Western culture, and most certainly, I think, the American way of looking at it. We're supposed to see him as the loser in the story. But when we think, or when other people examine the story, the Eastern Orthodox understanding of the story often focuses on what happened. Not only, yes, he lost his money, because sometimes that just happens. But what else happened there? Do we even remember? There was a famine in the land. That was the tipping point to where he could no longer survive. Because maybe they think, that's what really happened, is there just wasn't enough food. Everybody was hurting. So of course, he may have made some mistakes, and then something bad happened and he couldn't recover. Do we even remember the famine so often when we hear this story? The African tradition lifts up something else that I think that we forget about often too. It says that he's there, he's working, and he's feeding the pigs, and he'd be like, man, that slop's looking pretty good. And it says there at the end, in just that little half sentence, and no one helped him. No one gave him anything. It gets to this idea he survived losing all of his money. He survived the famine, and he was working, and nobody cared. And nobody would give him anything. Nobody would help him. His friends had abandoned him. His people who he had worked with or probably given money in the past had abandoned him. And that was the breaking point. That idea of when times get tough, you need somebody to help you, and he had nobody. He was alone. And that's why everything fell apart. And each viewpoint we can have there has that scriptural backing that we can bring to it. And whatever each viewpoint we cling to, it changes how we feel about this young man who's gone out into the world. And that brings us to the other brother, the one that stays home, the good one, the one that faithfully served his father. He's the eldest. He's the one that's going to get the greater share of the inheritance to begin with. So his brother takes his portion and he goes, and everything that was left, he knew, well, that's mine someday. And I think sometimes we can see his anger when the other brother comes back, because he knows, well, he's already squandered everything he had. So really, if he comes back, whatever he gets is really coming from me, not dad anymore, because it would have been mine. So he might have that idea of righteous anger, and he says, I work so hard. I work every day, and nobody cares. I don't ask you for anything. And maybe he doesn't ask for anything because he knows, if I just ask for anything, I'm just getting what's already mine. And then the brother returns, and there's no justice. There's nothing made right. If anything, the father does the opposite. He was dumb enough to give him money in the first place, and then he welcomes him back. Did he not learn his lesson? And not only that, does he not just welcome him back, he throws him a party. He kills the fatted calf. How can that be fair? When the other son works every day and night, and he doesn't even get to have a good time with his friends. But baby brother shows up, and daddy just gives him more. Because that's what it's like when you have a little sibling, isn't it? They always get it better than you do. I've heard that idea of fairness in my house so often. Because Emma is pretty sure that the parents that raised her are not the same parents that are raising Violet. And I don't know, she's probably right. But the older brother, he's angry. And, so before we discuss the father in the story, which brother do you identify with? Where are you in this story so far? Are you the one that's been lost? Are you the one that's had a hard time? Or are you the one that's been there, the steady rock that everybody can rely on? And we are here in church every morning. And some of us can side with that younger sibling who wanted our inheritance here and now. And maybe we lost it and we're looking for a way back. We could be here hungry or repentant or feeling unworthy. And this is a good place to be if you're doing those things. Thinking that no one can help you or will help you and you feel lost. And sometimes you're the older sibling. You're the one that's worked hard and you've been faithful time and time again. And you wonder how long you can keep it up because nobody notices. You feel like you're on the outside as everybody parties on the inside. Thinking nobody notices and nobody cares. And in a way, you can feel lost too. It's not the story of the prodigal son. Jesus doesn't begin that way. He says, there was a man who had 2 sons. It's the story of both, really. Whether it's poor choices or poor circumstances or feeling like we've been treated unjustly, it's easy to find our way lost and broken and suffering. Most certainly when we see that world around us. But we have one person left that makes all the difference. We have the father. And truthfully, he's been mistreated by both of his sons. The one who wanted to take out his inheritance and run, and the other one that can't find a way to care about his sibling or to care about his father's son. And the father shows up and goes to both of them. For the younger son, he had sinned, he had left, and he was lost. And he appeared on the horizon. You would think, he had probably rehearsed that speech time and time again. Father, I've sinned against you and I've sinned against heaven. Please just let me be one of your servants. Let me be one of your slaves. Just let me back home. You probably think he'd probably muttered that, a lot on that way. And he gets about halfway out and Dad stops him and is just overcome with joy. He says, bring out the best. My son that was dead is alive again. How would that feel? To have somebody so happy to see you, even if you'd wronged them. To be back with them. To know they still love you and they still care about you. And we have the other brother who's lost too. But he's lost in his anger. He's worked faithfully, but he has that festering anger inside him. And the father comes to him, and he meets the older brother that's standing there in the shadows outside of the party. And he says, come home. Come in. You have everything that I have to give. All you have to do is just come and take it. Father comes to both because God comes to us. Whether we've done it all right or whether we've done it all wrong, in Jesus Christ, in the incarnation, God takes on the messiness that is humanity. And God's there racing out to meet you, to welcome you home, to say, you are my beloved. He's also there if you've already been here, but you're just mad. And you're done. And you're sick of seeing everybody else do better than you, or so you think. God says, I see you, and I love you, and you have everything I have to give. Come in to the joy of your Father's house. Through Jesus Christ, we are welcomed home. In Jesus Christ, we are given everything. Peace, hope, love, grace, the life abundant. It's all waiting for you. You just have to know whether or not you need to come home or just come in. In the name of the God that created us, in the name of the God that has saved us, in the name of the Spirit that lives within us. Amen.